Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the developing relationship between Pakistan and China, and of course, in particular, focus to launch of phase 2 of CPEC, of course, for which the Prime Minister is scheduled to visit China the first week of June. This upcoming visit, of course, will cover important issues, among which, of course, is the CPEC and its phase 2, but also with regards to improving trade and investment ties with China on the whole, and how the current political and economic situation of Pakistan will continue its strong relationship with China that has been there historically as well, and what sort of future do we look at in particular with the kind of trade and investment that we want to focus on in the areas that we want to move on with. And also, of course, we will be talking about how Pakistan aims to go forward with the CPEC phase 2, particularly within the country, in spite of the economic and security challenges that exist, and what sort of assurances can be provided or measures that can be taken in order to protect this phase 2 from any spoilers. We're also going to be taking a look at what this means in terms of the larger partnership that Pakistan has with China, in light of course, its relationship with other countries in the international community, including, of course, the United States, and what sort of precarious balance Pakistan would have to maintain, and what indicators or challenges exist on that front. So that's going to be our focus in the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analysts Farrukh, Pitafi and Faisal. And we've also been joined online by our guest, Mr. Jauhar, Saleem, who's former Foreign Secretary and President of the Institute of Regional Studies. Thank you very much for joining us, Jauhar Saab, and being part of the discussion. And I'll start with your perspective first on the current dynamic that we have with China, and especially in particular the focus of CPEC phase 2. And I understand that when we look back at the past couple of years with China, CPEC, of course, has been large part of our relationship, especially when we talk about trade and investment dynamics of the relationship. And so I want to understand your perspective, given our current economic situation, and what sort of dynamics do you foresee now with Pakistan entering phase 2, and how fundamentally you think it can be different from phase 1 of the project, and what sort of measures do we need to keep in mind as we enter this new phase?
Thank you. This is going to be a very important visit for Pakistan, because it is perhaps the most important strategic partnership that Pakistan has, actually. That's why the two countries call it the all-weather strategic cooperative partnership, the ironclad friendship, iron brothers and iron friends, But these phrases, of course, signify not just the warmth and intensity of relations between these two countries, but also the great history that we have. A history of partnership, a history of economic cooperation, a history of very close cooperation in the international fora, and in so many areas of interaction. CPEC, of course, a flagship project of the BRI, the Brick and Road Initiative by China. It has been very important element of this great friendship. And for Pakistan, it is critically important. Why? Because for the last many years, Pakistan has not been getting the type of foreign investment the country has been seeking. And we all know that how important foreign investment is for development and economic stability of countries, because these days countries can only develop and prosper and experience growth if they're part of that loop, the global loop, in terms of investment cooperation and trade cooperation and so many areas of economic interaction. So in terms of Pakistan and China, China is not just Pakistan's biggest trading partner, and it has been so for many, many years now, but also the biggest investment partner for so many years now, again, particularly since the inception of CPEC in 2015. Now, CPEC itself has three phases. The first phase was from 2015 to 2021 or 22. The second phase was from 21-22 to 2025. And then the third phase was envisaged from 2025 to 2030. And when the first phase was primarily focusing on building the roads and sort of, the connectivity infrastructure and energy production because Pakistan was facing a huge energy deficit, which had really strangulated its economy. The second phase of CPAC and the third phase would be focusing more besides these areas, the energy and sort of energy cooperation and sort of connectivity cooperation, and they would be focusing on developing those special economic zones, those industrial zones. The two countries had envisaged 9 SEZs originally, but as we know, the work was rather a bit slow on the implementation of this vision. But recently, the two countries have really sort of, started deliberations to see how to accelerate that process. And I think this is going to be a very important segment of sort of, of cooperation between the two countries, which will be discussed during this visit. And also some other big projects, for example, the railway line project, ML, which is for, again, a critical importance for Pakistan. Then again, there are so many other sectors. There's the industries, of course. There's an understanding that as China embarks upon what it calls, there's this new phase that they've embarked upon, which is called the high quality development phase for China, whereby they would be moving upwards in terms of value added, value addition in more sophisticated industries. So there's a possibility of relocation of many industries of sort of intermediate range to Pakistan. So that would be very important. Then in terms of, there's a services sector and agriculture. There's a great deal of possibilities of cooperation, and the two countries have been discussing that because Pakistan has one of the largest irrigation systems, a huge chunk of arable lands. But in terms of technology, we're far behind the world standards, where China could really provide a lot of input in terms of joint collaboration. Then there's the mining sector. In mining sector, again, Pakistan is endowed with a lot of natural resources, but what we lack is the capital and the know-how and technology. Again, something where China's cooperation for mutually beneficial collaboration could be very handy. Then there are new areas, for instance, green development possibilities in terms of artificial intelligence and sort of, these are the new technology, emerging technologies where China has invested a lot. And Pakistan has a huge skilled force in the IT sector, for instance, so that is a promising area. So all these possibilities would be discussed. As we know, during the visit, Prime Minister would be meeting with President Xi Jinping. He would be meeting with Prime Minister Li Qiang, and of course, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and then there'll be so many meetings between the accompanying delegations, the delegates, like technical level meetings and meetings at the ministerial level, where so the possibilities of cooperation and understanding arrived at between the leadership level would be sort of discussed in terms of implementation. So I believe that this visit, I was part of the last visit that Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif conducted. That was in 2022. I accompanied him as the Foreign Secretary then. And during that visit as well, was part of the discussion. So I know how much keenness there was on both sides to expand the existing partnership, the economic partnership, and build on that in so many different areas. And in China, which is, we all know, it has, witnessed, or it has been able to develop economically to almost to a point of transformation, a transformative development that China has witnessed in the last 2-3 decades. I think there's so many possibilities of sort of, replicating segments of that in Pakistan, for which we would be really looking forward to have Chinese cooperation.
Absolutely, and I explore more of that when I come back to you next. But Faisal, I also want your perspective on the current dynamics and the evolving situation as we see. And of course, our relationship with China is not new, and it goes way back, and we've of course been there for each other in difficult times. But I want to understand, particularly given the current geopolitical and economic situation that Pakistan is in, What exactly do you think can be the possible areas that we can work on? Of course, there is trade and investment in various sectors that have been outlined by Jauhar Saab as well. But beyond that too, what areas of cooperation do you think that can exist between the two, especially in terms of mutual challenges that both the countries face?
Yes, Anna, it's a very good question, and it's more of a what's the way forward in terms of course, the challenges which are being faced by Pakistan, especially related to our economy. We have been facing economic challenges, and we know that there was, a patch of CPAC that actually slowed the pace of CPAC. And that was, of course, owing to the fact that we were going through, I mean, the whole world was going through a pandemic at that time. And yes, CPAC was affected during that time as well. But now, when we are heading towards this fresh phase, all we need to do is, of course, the way forward is that the tech transfer, which is required in different fields, in different sectors of Pakistan, that must be, of course, made available. When we talk about SIFC, it is playing, a very important role in fixing Pakistan's economy, and of course, agriculture sector and mining sector, as Ambassador Jauhar has rightly pointed out. Of course, we lack the technology, and that technology of course will be shared by China with Pakistan. And when we talk about agriculture, of course Pakistan heavily relies upon the traditional ways of agriculture, whereas we know that the world, especially the Western world and China, they have excelled in the agricultural technology. And with that technology, I mean, with the provided land, the crops can be enhanced and the production can be enhanced, and that is obviously, if available to Pakistan, that tech transfer would be pivotal for Pakistan's economic gains as well in coming future. We shouldn't be forgetting that Pakistan is a country that is on one side it is a doorway to the Central Asian republics, including Afghanistan, and of course they have the requirements, the food requirements, and all of the requirements related to agriculture. And then we have another door that open towards the Gulf countries. I mean, we shouldn't be forgetting that we are placed where the Gulf opens, and we are at the door of the Gulf, and we can of course replace many other countries who are playing as a breadbasket for the Gulf countries. We can be an alternate, a good alternate to the Gulf countries as well. And in that context, of course, we have been highlighting in this show related to how we should be attracting investments, FDIs, in the sector of agriculture. And with the enhanced crops and agriculture, with the help of tech, of course, we can make a difference, and that would be, of course, pivotal for our economy as well. When it comes to this coming phase, in this phase, of course, we are expecting that the IT sector would be getting a sort of cooperation from China, and then infrastructure, the remaining infrastructure would be of course looked after as well. So in this context, we know that the world it is excelling. The countries that are excelling in IT sector, AI, emerging technologies, all of these fields, they are actually selling their ideas to the world. And in that context, of course, it's a sort of field in which there is very lesser raw material, and in shape of brains, in shape of the institutions, the educational institutions, and different fields of AI and technology. I mean, Pakistan has already done a lot, and our brains who are working throughout the world, they are only doing it because there were lesser opportunities in Pakistan. And if this goes ahead with the cooperation of China, of course, we'll be having more opportunities in Pakistan, and in that context, of course, we'll be creating more jobs in Pakistan, IT related jobs, and at the same time we will be selling our ideas as well to the world, when it comes to IT. So, as I have been mentioning since long, that Pakistan currently is earning around 2.5 to 2.6 billion dollars in shape of IT sector, whereas the surveys conducted by the Western surveyors, they believe that Pakistan has the capacity to, of course, generate more than 50 billion dollars in this field. And if if this goes well, of course, I am expecting that the Pakistan would, of course, enhance its billions in terms of economy. And to me, I think this visit is going to be very important visit, and we will see in coming future that the positive effects of this visit would be shown in coming future very soon.
Right. And Farrukh, while we of course talk about the direct impact that perhaps we have from phase 2 of the CPEC and of course the trade and investment effect that will be there, I want to also understand how that will also by and large affect the economic dynamics between the two countries, particularly in terms of perhaps the power sector loans that reportedly the Prime Minister will also be taking a look at in terms of the possibility of restructuring that, and then of course with regards to areas also existing and how we're going to proceed with more Chinese IPPs. So what exactly do you think can be the possible future, given of course at the same time we're engaging on really tough measures with the IMF, we have the upcoming budget, and then of course this particular aspect will also play a huge role in those numbers?
I think it is a brilliant question, Sana. Thank you very much for this. And I'm going to actually come to it in a bit, but I wanted to actually focus on the broader matters also, because we have been talking about China, Pakistan for quite some time, and of course when it comes to the relationship and the friendship, it is hard not to find any policy maker on both sides who does not use poetic language to describe the relationship. It doesn't happen anywhere else unless you're talking about Modi's strange kind of language that he uses these days. But frankly, Pakistan and China are very close allies, and that closeness grows every day. But that does not mean that any bilateral relationship can be seen independent of the global trends or regional trends. And I think that in that light, it is really fortunate. The timing is very fortunate that the Prime Minister is going there, because half of the world at this moment, Sana, either has voted or is going to vote in coming days, right? India is voting currently, America is going to vote later, UK and Europe are also going to the polls. So with that kind of an atmosphere, there's a lot to evaluate, a lot to consider, and then chart out your policy strategy together. And I think that that is why this visit is very important. Now, when you talk about the projects that are going to be discussed, two projects have actually risen to the top, because we have been talking about them. Ambassadors have also mentioned it. It is ML1 project, which is a mainline 1 project of railways, and then Karachi Circular Railway is also going to be very important. But having said that, now let us talk about the economic concerns that you actually flagged. I think that China has been a very kind, very generous lender and investor. They have repeatedly every year with other countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE, Pakistan had to put in a little bit of effort. But when it came to China, they have been rolling over our outstanding debt for quite some time. Every year that happens, and Pakistan very happily reports that this time that burden has actually lessened. Now the concern regarding IPPs, the installed capacity, and the monies that Pakistan either owes the IPPs or will be actually owing them. Because of that, there is some kind of concern, because at that time when CPEC was being introduced, one thing that perhaps we did not actually imagine was the ability to consume the electricity that we might actually produce. Electricity can be produced, and Pakistan has installed capacity which is more than Pakistan's needs, but unfortunately because of the infrastructure, because of the high cost, forbidding cost, it becomes very difficult. Similarly, when it comes to loans as well, there are concerns regarding too. So Pakistan is going to actually reach out to China, and Pakistan is going to seek some kind of restructuring, but that also has to happen with the other groups like Paris group as well. So Pakistan, if it achieves that, Pakistan gets some breather. But I don't think that the contracts that we gave IPPs at that time, Chinese companies by the way, at that time when the whole projects were being introduced, they can be renegotiated. I don't think we have that kind of ability to do that. And that means that our circular debt will keep on pestering us for some time unless we actually bombard the people with a lot of cost of electricity.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Saab, I also want your perspective now on another major challenge to CPEC, which of course has been previously security. And of course, there have been some unfortunate incidents in the past that have brought CPEC at the forefront. And we understand the kind of elements that are involved or are behind such attacks. But of course, this is an important factor to continue with the second phase as well. And the kind of protection and assurance that of course needs to exist for the Chinese nationals and workers in the country. With of course the rise in terrorist activities with the country, what do you think need to be the major aspects that we need to look at and ensure while we embark on phase 2 of the project in order to make sure that there is in fact no negative impact or no harm done to where we're headed with CPEC?
Yeah, yes, Sana. As it has been mentioned, this particular visit is going to be a 3-day long, and it will include a meeting of the Joint Cooperation Committee. That will be the 13th meeting of the Joint Cooperation Committee of CPEC. So it's heavily focused on CPEC. Now, you've rightly mentioned that one of the concerns on the Chinese side, and perhaps a primary concern, has been the security of Chinese personnel working in Pakistan. There have been some unfortunate incidents in Pakistan in recent days. We have faced a situation where we witnessed a spate of terrorist activity, an increase. In fact, this has been happening since, I would say, 2023, since that ceasefire between Pakistan and TTP ended. There was a unilateral ceasefire, but TTP ended, and following that. But it's not just TTP, there are many other organizations. Now that is an area where Pakistan needs to deliver. We need to definitely strengthen our paraphernalia of security. Pakistan has assured China on various instances, and Pakistan has, of course, endeavored on its part as well. Now, as we all know, terrorism is something that becomes very hard to deal with, even with the most sophisticated security apparatuses, as faced by even superpowers. But having stated that, I think it would be critically important for Pakistan to ensure the security of all the Chinese personnel working in Pakistan, because China is not just bringing the capital, the technology, the know-how, the expertise, but also, we have to remember that China is facing a great deal of criticism in the world because of this BRI. And it is in the face of this criticism that China, in fact, reviewed the scope of BRI. And, there's this new strategy which emerged that, okay, we'll probably curtail it a bit in terms of the size of the projects, and the new concept of small is beautiful came up. But within the scope of the CPEC, which is the flagship project of BRI, that was not the case. the scope of CPAC, which, like the three phases together, is about $65 billion, and about $26 billion have already been spent. So that scope has not been changed. And some of the big projects, as has been mentioned, the ML1 and Karachi Circular and other connectivity projects and all these LCZs and then the infrastructure related to connectivity and Gawada Port. And so all that stays intact. In fact, there's a talk of expanded cooperation. And I think that shows the resolve of China to stay steadfast in the face of challenges, as well as Pakistan resolve. We all know that not everybody is happy with this cooperation between Pakistan and China. Like it could be states and, of course, non-state actors. So that that challenge would remain. But I think Pakistan is up to the challenge. The Interior Minister recently had a press conference, and I think he had mentioned a great deal about that. The Prime Minister himself, on many occasions, has categorically highlighted Pakistan's resolve to ensure foolproof security for all Chinese working in Pakistan and all the projects as well. So you're right in saying that this would be an important aspect of the ongoing cooperation on CPAC. But I think there's another area where we need to improve as well, and that is the ease of business, the bottlenecks, bureaucratic bottlenecks, and some regulatory bottlenecks as well sometimes. And for that particular aspect, this SIFC mechanism was created,
Right.
not just for cooperation between Pakistan and China, but between Pakistan and the Gulf countries as well. And I hope and I trust that.
Yeah, Ambassador Jauhar, when we talk about, of course, the security aspect of CPAC, how important it is to understand or realize that these threats to CPAC, they are not only to Pakistan, but of course CPAC workers and the Chinese teachers, they are getting a target, becoming a target just because that somewhere behind the curtains does not like China to be investing in Pakistan, and they do not like the idea of CPAC successful, so that because we know that it is very important for BRI as well, and the regional connectivity, including we have been hearing that eventually CPAC would be interlinked with Central Asian republics through Afghanistan. In this whole context, can we say that there are powers behind the curtains playing this havoc on CPAC, and of course the friendship between Pakistan and China, and this must be realized that this isn't just Pakistan's problem, but it is a regional problem, because nobody wants to see Pakistan, Afghanistan, Central Asian republics and China having good relations.
Before Ambassador Saab answers for Sana, I just wanted to share a fun fact that I can now practically run a sweepstake when Faisal is going to bring up Afghanistan into discussion. So once again it has happened.
Right.
Over to you, Ambassador Saab.
Thank you. Well, I had hinted at that, but I think it's very, very obvious that there are powers, and particularly India, we already know that. I think it's an open secret. And there are very many instances where we know now that, Ajit Doval's this defensive offense tenet, it was not just about it was actually not about any defense. It was basically an offensive concept whereby they were actually, colluding with terrorist groups and supporting terrorism or fomenting terrorism in Pakistan. And that terrorism was particularly directed at many of the projects between Pakistan and China. It's very clear that, because of the hostility between Pakistan and India, India views Pakistan-China relations in a negative light, and this increasing the strengthening of partnership, and particularly the defense and economic partnership between Pakistan and China, it is viewed with great skepticism. And there have been endeavors, very many endeavors directly through their agents in Pakistan, some of who we all know, they were even got red-handed, literally, but also through supporting some groups which were based in Afghanistan. So that is something that I think which is pretty well known and well understood. But that is unfortunately, how international politics works sometimes. Although we all know, on the face of it, the Indians, they claim that they are, they're against all forms and manifestations of terrorism, and they keep on blaming Pakistan. But the fact is that, they have been involved, and they're very much targeting CPAC as a project by targeting, the personnel working on it, regardless of the personalities. And, it has been done through, sometimes through targeted killings, sometimes through providing funds to terrorist organizations, sometimes, providing other type of support. So I think this is all pretty well documented. In fact, Pakistan had in the past even provided dossiers to the United Nations and other international important, relevant agencies, and many are at the bilateral levels as well. But sadly, it is, not given due recognition or importance by many of these countries or the multilateral fora because of India's political weight and its,
Right, absolutely. And that, of course, are important factors, Ambassador. But I also want to build upon what you talked about in terms of ease of doing business. And Farrukh, I want your perspective in terms of how we're going to ensure that, and what Faisal earlier also talked about in terms of the importance of tech transfer and actually improving the scale or the level at which we're engaging with China when we talk about B2B or G2G businesses, that we can actually do so, and partnerships that we can actually move forward to beyond CPAC.
Right. Thank you, Sana. Again, a very useful question. When we were talking about technology transfer, one concern that I had, and I wanted to actually flag it then, is that we just actually on whims actually talk about these things, right? There is a concern that you have to appreciate. In China and Pakistan, Pakistan's economy, because it is still fragile, we are still a labor-intensive kind of industry, right? Whatever industry we have, mostly people are employed, and that's how you create jobs. In China, the cost of labor has actually increased because their PPP has increased, right? Their purchasing power parity, their per capita income has increased as well. Because of that, most of the technology they have to offer is capital intensive. It is not a labor intensive. So my concern right now is what does Pakistan need right now? I think that there is an incredible churning going on in international markets because of AI, because of automation, because of so much else. And Pakistan's economy still remains highly fragile. So what do we need first of all? Do we need technology of all things, or do we need skill transfer? I think that it is the most important thing. For example, we have Pakistani diaspora. We send Pakistanis abroad as part of the labor market. We send them to Saudi Arabia, we send them to UAE and Arab countries. In Saudi Arabia, there is this city called Noam, right? And that is going to be highly advanced. But most of the people that we could send there are not up to scale there, right? They are not up to scratch. So what you need right now, with all the benefactors we have got, is to invest heavily in skill development and skill transfer. Without that, I don't think that we will be able to compete at all.
Absolutely.
Now, regarding B2B and G2G, I think that there are three things that are happening. G2G is happening, B2G is happening, right? And whatever limited capacity, especially because we are talking about SEZs, they might actually open the possibility of B2B as well. But the problem is, one thing that we haven't been able to actually work on is G2B, that is Chinese government and Pakistani businesses. Whenever our delegations go, we do take certain businessmen as well, but whether they have the voice in the meetings or not, that is the question. Why not actually pitch your ideas there so that their government or their businesses can also invest in local businesses here? So I think that with all those things happening, and particularly one aspect that I hear my friend Raja Faisal repeatedly talking about is AI. And the other thing is very important, IT. I think that whatever window of opportunity we had regarding IT is almost past, because now AI is generating software and it is happening very rapidly. If you want to actually check, go on GPT stores, other AI stores, and you will see that they create AI that can create code and that can create software as well, right? Now the problem with AI is, how do you deploy it, how do you learn it? Kai-Fu Lee's book, AI Superpowers, is great because there you actually see the opportunity to train AI. And there is a divide between the two spheres of influence, America and China. But unfortunately, in the past 10 years since AI has become a craze, we haven't been able to benefit from either. So why are we sleeping? I call it opportunity cost because our domestic crises have been so big. We haven't actually paid attention to the kind of transformation that is happening all over the world. So I hope that in coming days, we can ask our Chinese peers and others also to invest heavily in skill development and in helping us learn more.
Right, absolutely. Jauhar Saab, there's another important aspect that we want to discuss, and that's, of course, the dynamics between Pakistan and the US as well. And, of course, while we evolve on this journey with China, this has always been one of the concerns. And while, of course, Pakistan has its own stance of having good relations with all its allies and all of the countries in terms of moving forward with foreign policy decisions or trade and investment and collaborations on other fronts, this, again, has been still part of certain dynamics that exist or can impact each other's relationship. And of course, we have had China-Pakistan withstand any such pressures. But I want your perspective on how moving forward this will evolve, and what sort of balance will Pakistan have to take, and how precarious is the situation, in fact, particularly in terms of the US perspective.
And Ambassador Saab, could you also speak to the fact that there is an election that is due in America? Will that be a factor at all in this issue, in this equation, sir?
Good question.
Well, I think it's very clear that, of course, like the US endeavors to contain China, they have impacted relations between China and many countries in the world. So that factor is there, but at the same time, one has to remember that in international diplomacy, there have been, it's very often that countries can have good relations with other countries who are hostile to each other or who are having some serious issues between them. For instance, the US has very good relations with Pakistan. They have excellent relations with India, and that has been historically so for many years now, although Pakistan and India have so many issues and disputes between them. So it is not uncommon. Pakistan, but of course, like the situation here, the only difference is that we are talking about a superpower and an emerging power, like, and that competition is getting intense. So in this situation, we have a tight rope to walk. But I think what I've seen in many deliberations, the Americans are well aware of Pakistan's, of the importance that Pakistan places on relations with China. They're also well aware of our economic challenges and how important China is in terms of, the cooperation, possibilities of cooperation that can address some of those economic challenges that is there. As I've already mentioned, China is our biggest trading partner, our biggest investment cooperation partner. In many ways now it's becoming the biggest development cooperation partner as well. On the other hand, with the US, we've had and we still have a very important relationship. US House is, they're the biggest, importers of Pakistani products. We have the biggest trade surplus in our trade with the US. Our biggest, one of our largest diasporas in the world is living in the US, and we could get billions of dollars of remittances from there. And besides that, within the multilateral forums, there has been ongoing cooperation in so many different areas. So I think, the nature of these two relationships is different. China is our neighbor, and while we have a strategic dimension in our relations with the US as well, but the strategic dimension that we have in our relations with China has probably a vaster array or spectrum. So that is there. So it's not that it is hard to make Americans understand that. But even when that understanding is there, challenges can arise because, in certain areas there could be sort of, conflicts of policies. Like Americans, for instance, we see now that economically they are putting more and more tariffs on products from China. So if we are collaborating with China, those additional tariffs could of course be a factor on our bilateral cooperation if we are planning to export to third countries. But, and I could give so many other examples. So I think we'll have to tread, deftly, in terms of our diplomacy and in terms of, the economic bridges that we are building. That doesn't mean that, that we have to sort of, in some ways, review our relations with China. All that it means is that we have to be, we have to keep in view sort of, our relations with the US as well, in terms of sort of, just wherever it's required. There, you can, because you keep in contact, and if there are some misperceptions or misunderstandings which arise, then you clear them up. So that is it's a diplomatic challenge, and I think our diplomacy is up to this challenge. We've had, and we have to all remember that we've had great relations with both China and the US since the 70s, and in fact, it was Pakistan which played the role of a bridge between the US and China at the time. Then, when they didn't literally, well, they were not on talking terms, like starting with the Kissinger's secret visit to China, which was facilitated by Pakistan. So we have a long history, and we have a long expertise in this area, so to speak. So I think while the challenge would be there, but it's not an insurmountable challenge. It's a challenge that we can live with, and we have the capacity, and we have the intent and the will to ensure that our relations with the US also keep on a positive trajectory, and and without affecting or impacting our relations with China. Although seemingly, there would be situations where we might have sort of there might be conflicting ideas coming from both our friends. But then
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Ambassador Saab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate as well. Of course, there is a lot that remains to be seen in terms of how this relationship will continue, but we wish the Prime Minister the best of luck on his visit, and we hope that there are good things that come out of it and that we move forward with CPEC Phase 2 and, of course, the evolving dynamics with China to a better future for both the countries. That's all that we have from the debate. We'll now see you tomorrow.